can't always get what they want. They can't always get what they want. They can't always get what they want. But if we try each time, we just might find that we can get what we need. Hello everybody, this is Brian O'Hearn speaking. This is episode 14 of Spreading the Word. We're trying to get out the word to everybody who's interested about what's going on with the total rewrite of the planning and zoning regulations that has been proposed by P&Z. The other night was the second part of the public hearing. It was actually closed at the end of the meeting, but the meeting went on for about an hour and 20 minutes, including the closure part. And I'm going to bring a little bit of it to you tonight. Stay tuned tonight and don't change the channels every once in a while, because you're going to hear a really good people tonight giving feedback on these new totally rewritten planning and zoning regulations at this continuation of the public hearing. They will be Michael Ham and John Marisi. Because it was a very interesting meeting in a lot of ways. I didn't say anything during the meeting. I observed and took a lot of pictures. Some of them came out pretty good, some of them didn't. You'll see some of them tonight. But there were a couple problems right in the beginning of the meeting. Number one, a couple of the people that were missing, the first people on the first team of planning and zoning, showed up this time. They weren't there at the first public hearing and said they wouldn't be there. But to my surprise, they hadn't even listened to the tapes or watched the DVD on channel 191 and 2 and 3 and whatever channels it was on at Charter before they came to this meeting. Very unprofessional. It's not something I would do if I were on a commission. I'd be prepared when I came to the meeting. The other problem we had was they locked the front door at Town Hall at a certain time in the evening, probably after working hours. And on Tuesday, that's about 4 o'clock. I don't know what time they locked the doors. But by the time we got to 7 o'clock, and people were coming for the public hearing that was held in the Hicks room of Town Hall, they couldn't get in the front door. There was no sign on the front door, so a lot of people who never go to the Town Hall and don't know what the regulations are down there, didn't realize that the door was locked. So we believe that many didn't even come in because they didn't know they had to go down around the corner through the police station, get on the elevator, and come up to the second floor for the meeting. So that didn't start out too well at all. Once again, the chairman was a little rough. I don't think he totally understands how public hearings work. He tried to interrupt people many times, as he always seems to do. Try to get them to speed up. Try to get them to shut up if he can. That didn't work this time. But anyway, there were very many people there from the lake area mostly, a couple from the town. And they did go through what their concerns were, but the one who did the most speaking was a past selectman, vice president of planning and zoning for 6 years, and a member of planning and zoning altogether for 14 years, including the 6 years that he was vice chairman, in the good old days when people in town were trying to get things done. They were trying to put in the business parks and trying to grow the grand list. So he had a lot of experience. I don't think there's too many people in our town, even those that are on the commission, that have as much experience as he does, because he's also a contractor by trade, and he deals with engineers all the time around the area, not only in Winston, but Torrington and other areas around. And he knows a lot about regulations, not only in our town, but in other towns. So one of the people that I'm going to have talk mostly tonight, from the voice version I got from the town hall this morning, I'm going to play Michael Ham. Michael is backed by about 220 people or so that signed the petition and call him all the time from week to week, telling of their problems, going through about 45 minutes of presenting the information that he studied up on and that everybody called him about. A lot of people call him, a lot of people call me, a lot of people call Steve Sedlowski, a few people call Mark Melanson, the building inspector. But anyway, many people call Michael Ham about their problems because they know he knows all about it. They know he will read the planning and zoning regulations and understand them, and he'll be able to present their case for them when they can't come in from other towns and cities when these meetings are held at this time of year. So we're thankful. We citizens, homeowners, property owners, because he's very, very, very astute, understands these regulations, can read through all the difficult parts, has experience dealing with them all over the town, has experience dealing with all these people that are on the commission, knows what they personally have, and how they've gone through these various commissions in town. And we should be thankful that we have somebody like him to help us, because he can see through it all. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play the whole part of Mickey Ham's presentation and the banter that went on during it with various people, the chairman, Steve Sedlowski, the land use director, a couple people in the audience, and I think you'll really appreciate this. So tonight's program is going to mainly concentrate on this, so I have some time at the end. I'll play a couple of the other people briefly and tell you what their concerns were. But all in all, it was a very good meeting for we residents, landowners, property owners, business owners, industry owners, maybe not so much for them because they're cutting back on industry zones. But anyway, let's listen to Mike for a while, see what he has to say.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Michael Ham, 405 West Wakefield Boulevard. I've taken the time to read through the new regulations. I've got to say, I think you guys did a fairly good job. I'm actually rather proud. Although I do have some recommendations I'd like to make to this board about them. And if you'd be so kind to oblige me, I'd like to do that. First couple of things is, Steve, I don't have that change for mixed use that you just read for adding the language for mixed use definition.
It should be in that packet that was read on
The new ones that you had tonight?
Page 131 was
near the back page.
that's the last page, I think it is.
Okay. I didn't get these until I got here. I hadn't seen these before, so that's the only reason I'm asking.
131, 132.
Okay. Just another point of housekeeping, and I don't want to sound like a jerk, but Mrs. Wilkes and Mr. Melcher, you didn't review the records before you're coming to the meeting tonight.
I did not hear the audio.
I reviewed the record, but not the audio.
The record being just the minutes?
Right.
Okay. You're not going to vote tonight, though, are you, until they listen to the record? Or
We will abide by whatever has to be done.
okay, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you've covered in this, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't seen it yet. In the town gateway zone, you've added bulk storage, correct?
Yes.
And have you added that as a special permit?
Yes.
And have you added outside storage, unlimited, to that?
There's storage listed now, I believe. Some form of fashion.
It's just permitted use of storage business outdoor, and it's a limited, but at the limited part, I wasn't able to find a real definition of that.
Outdoor limited, the storage of materials outside of a structure other than fencing, either as an accessory or primary use.
So I look at that gateway, and I see people who have construction equipment parked, and I mean, that's considered an accessory use or part of their business.
Yes.
And if someone was to want to develop a garden center and wanted to display the garden tractors or whatever out front,
Yeah,
that
would
would
fall
cover
under
it.
that.
Okay, good. Thanks. I'm glad to see it. So you think that the outside storage, why limited though? Why did you put limited in there?
I'm not sure the consultant came up with that definition. But
I would recommend that you strike the limited. It seems to be distracting to most people who read it, that it is limited. I went through the rural residential zone and looked at the minimum lot requirements, minimum lot width, but I see you address that further on in your appendix of existing lots can be used as they are. Is that
yes, as long as they're legal existing lots, they can be built on.
exactly
You just can't make any new ones
right?
that don't meet. Yep.
Moving on to the Highland Lake District, again, you moved that minimum lot area up to 40,000 square feet and a minimum lot width up to 150 feet. Also, your minimum setback from the lake, the high water mark, is 35 feet. The minimum lot area seems excessive for what's there. I understand what you're trying to accomplish there to get it to more like a 1 acre zone. And the 150 feet probably doesn't agree with 90% of the lots that are up there at 100 feet and less.
Yeah, again, they're all legal they are legal non-conforming lots. The 150 feet, 40,000 square feet would only kick in for new lots, if you wanted to make new lots.
Yeah. I don't really see that happen, do you?
Probably not, but
Yeah.
I think there are some parcels up there that are part of the Highland Lake District that are certainly subdividable.
Okay. So your intent really is there for new and upcoming subdivisions that may take place up there. You would want to keep them in a 1 acre zone?
Correct.
Okay.
That's the way it is now as well, I believe.
How about the minimum setback at 35 feet? I would prefer to see it like 20 myself, but you're also regulated from the wetlands for 100 feet back from a regulated area, so.
That's something the commission can consider. We did talk about that in the committee a little bit, where that should be. The decision was made to leave it as is at this point, but certainly that's something that they could entertain, either the side or...
I'd make a recommendation, you move it back to 20 feet.
You're talking side, rear, front?
Minimum setback from the lake's high water mark. And I believe a front setback would be that from the street, not from the water side.
Yeah, and yes, on the lakeside, the lake is like the backyard. So,
Yes.
yeah.
So I don't see a problem with that because that's pretty much what it has been. Just a little history about that, and the reason I get a little concerned because Mr. Suter, your expert, said that he really didn't want to mess with these regulations. He and I had a conversation about it, and I believe he addressed that, saying he didn't want to touch it, simply because of, as I put forward, how Highland Lake was created, and it's 50-foot blocks, and I'm not going to go back through that. But part of what I see, and I've been a resident up there for over 30 years, and there's people here who've been residents up there for much longer than I have. And one of the things that we all recognize is that the lake's development over the last 15 to 20 years has been a wonderful thing and a wonderful way it's developed. And I hate to see it end up being limited to people who want to create better out of nothing. When I first built there, the building inspector here was Joanne Williams, and she used to come to our site on a daily basis because she was very interested in what we were doing. And one of her comments to me was, "Mike, why are you building a house like this here?" Because back in those days, 90 or 80% of the residents that were there were only part-time residents. They were cottages, and they were pretty well run down, and they all looked terrible. And there was only probably 25% of the people who lived there full-time, which was enabled by Perch Rock Trail and a few of those over there, which had sanitary sewer and city water. So the point I'm really trying to make is I think the lake has developed rather nicely over the last 15 to 20 years based on how that subdivision was created. And it's difficult at best, in my opinion, to try and incorporate regulations into something of how it was designed, subdivided, and sold. It's very difficult to apply those, especially to people, and it's hard, in my eyes, in a lot of essence, not to discriminate against those people because they've only got what they've got. So with all that said, I'd like to continue on in a couple of things, and the building height, again, is no taller than 30 feet. And I notice you've changed that.
Is there a time limit to the speaking?
Mike is being interrupted here by a member of the audience who should not be yelling out during the meeting. This often happens in P&Z meetings. The chairman didn't say anything, so Mike had to put him in his place.
Excuse me.
Where's the gentleman for?
Excuse me, this is a public hearing.
Is there a time
And I
limit?
believe I have the floor. You will get your turn if you wait.
We did not set a time at this point.
The height limit for which district are you talking about?
We're still in the Highland Lake
Highland Lake,
District.
yeah.
Yeah, still in the Highland Lake
30
District.
feet, yeah.
It indicates that it shall be no taller than 30 feet in height, and it's measured from an existing pre-development grade. I don't have an issue with that, but back in some of the appendages here, it indicates from the ceiling height of the top floor to the midsection of the roof. And now this indicates 30 feet from the second floor to the midsection of the roof.
It depends on the kind of building you're talking about. From the roof-
That's for an A-frame?
That's only for an A-frame.
Only.
Yes. And the idea on that was the midpoint of an A-frame, because the roof goes from the ground all the way to the top.
Right.
So you could have a 40-foot high A-frame, as opposed to a regular house would maybe be able to be maybe 30, 5 feet or so at the most. So we wanted to make them roughly the same, so we changed that definition. That's only for A-frames.
And back to your what you're saying here now on the pre-existing or pre-development grade, the building, exterior building, from the highest point of the pre-development, I think I
The
got
average.
Average,
The
so are you
average.
going to do a mean average from the lowest point to the highest point again, as our regulations work?
Yes, yeah, that's how it would be.
All right, so then you've reduced this now from 35 feet to 30 feet from our old regulations, am I right or wrong?
Right. Let me bring double regs. I think it's 30 in the old ones, isn't it?
Yes.
I believe so. I believe it's 30 in the old ones.
I thought it was 35.
Now, there's 30.
But then
Oh, I
fine.
think we're-
Nothing changed on everybody.
Okay, I'm good with that. Move on to the Highland Lake Business District. I think you've addressed Blaine Athorn's uses that he wanted to add in.
Yes.
He called me just prior to me coming, wanted to make sure they were there. He's got some business to attend to tonight, so he wasn't able to come, so I'm happy to relay that to you.
And Mr. Marici, they both have.
Okay. Next session I'd like to take a look at with you is the low-impact development regulations.
What page are you on?
21. And if I can bring everybody down to B, paragraph 4, the scope and applicability shall apply to all developments subject to a site plan review or approval of the Commission of the Zoning Board of Appeals, as the case may be for a special permit. A single-family dwelling that is not part of a subdivision of land shall be exempt from these low-impact development regulations, except in the HL district. There's language further on, again, in your appendix that doesn't make reference to the HL district again, and it seems like that was added in, and if you're going to allow it to be exempt in the RR districts and so forth, I understand everybody's concerned about the water quality of the lake and so forth, but I find that you're adding in one zone only that isn't going to be exempt. That becomes discriminatory. And I think that there may be some language that you could add to that may not make it discriminatory. And I'm just going to run this on you and see what you think. And except in the Highland Lake District, where best practices shall be employed as allowed by site conditions. And the reason I would stress that is because, as we've discussed prior, you've got lots that, pre-existing, non-conforming, that we'd all like to see bigger, and we'd like to see the development spread out more, but it didn't happen that way. So we've got to live with what we have. So if you're going to allow the rural development districts to be exempt from the low impact regulations, in my opinion, you should let the Highland Lake District be exempt from it, or add to it where best practices shall be employed as allowed by site conditions. And the reason I say this, you're not going to have room to employ all of the low impact development regulations that you have to get the amount of stuff that you want.
Yeah, I believe it's applicable for site plan reviews and special permits in all zones except for the residential zones, except for Highland Lake. And I think that's probably in there because there's a few provisions in the Highland Lake District regs themselves that indicate you should use the low impact to get density bonuses.
Yep.
And things like that. So I think that's probably why it's there. But unless you're going for a site plan or a special permit, the way I read this, it still wouldn't be applicable anyway.
Well, you're going to be
Unless you're trying to do one of those additional, get that additional coverage or what have you.
Exactly, and that's when you're going to need to go to a site plan. So then you're going to have to go back and apply the LID regulations.
Yeah, I mean, most of those provisions call for LID anyway. So it's, like for example, it's 20% impervious. You can go to 20% impervious, but you have to use LID practices. There's some other things that touch upon that too.
Well, in the site plan requirements, the site plan required in certain districts or for certain uses in other districts, in all TC, TCR, TG, and PI districts, and for all other uses other than single-family homes.
Right.
So,
It's typically commercial.
right. So what it's saying is, in the site plan requirements, you don't have to have one for Highland Lake District. But if you're going to employ low-impact development things, somebody's got to design it. So you're
There's nothing saying you can't do it. I mean, if you want to do LID provisions on a rural residential lot, nobody's going to stop you. This is where it's required to be reviewed. Is that?
so who's going to review it? So you're going to have to do a site plan to get it reviewed. based on saying that it's exempt, except in the Highland Lake
Well,
District?
if it's not required, it would have to be reviewed. I mean, if you live, out in Winchester Center somewhere and you wanted to do it, you could just do it yourself and we could help you do it. You wouldn't have to come in and get it approved.
But you're saying here that it's exempt in all the other zones except the HL district.
Right, because I don't believe it's required to be implemented in any of the other districts. It's only required in a couple of instances in the Highland Lake District.
The point I'm making is that makes it become discriminatory. Why wouldn't the conditions in a rural district be the same as they are in the Highland Lake District?
Because it's an entirely different zone, and the lots are much smaller, and we've got a lot of provisions in the Highland Lake District that are not applicable to the whole town.
But you still are going to allow 1 acre development in the rural districts based on your allowance of being able to build on an existing lot.
Yes.
So that's how it becomes discriminatory. You're back to small lots again. Actually, I think you were 12,500 square feet.
So lots of the lake are a quarter acre. A lot of them are much.
I understand it, but that's the point I'm making. How do you implement the LID requirements on a small lot like that? I mean, you're going to be limited on what you can actually design to put on there. And with the smaller the area, the more thought for design needs to be entered into it. So somebody's going to actually have to create that the low impact development, the LID design.
I mean, on a 1 acre lot, you wouldn't necessarily have to do it, but it's certainly something if they wanted to require it, they could.
Well, then I would ask you to add to that, except in the Highland Lake District, I would ask you to add where best practices shall be employed as allowed by site conditions. That makes it so that it's not discriminatory and saying we're worried about the Highland Lake District. We want people to employ the low impact development things. But if you don't have room for it and you can't get it there, although it will affect your allowance, the extra 5% if you don't get it there.
Yeah, we can look at that. I mean, I think that the only places where it's required is when you're trying to get, higher coverage or something like that. So that would be.
I'm looking at, I try to look at things from a builder's standpoint because that's what I do. And I could see a problem with this. And I don't want to see you guys have a problem with this as you go through applications and find out where it happens. One of the other things that you're asking for is existing site hydrology, both groundwater recharge and surface runoff. I'm referring to the low impact development B, which is 5. So this becomes an awful lot of work for the little bit of low impact development regulations that you're going to have to follow in a small site in the Highland Lake District. These are the points I'm trying to just drive home to everybody so you understand why this is going to be a problem. I can understand where you've got to look at hydrology, both groundwater recharge and surface runoff in larger size developments, where you'd actually do some test holes and perhaps some borings to check that hydrology. But to have to do all that to implement that small amount, you see what I'm driving at here?
Yes.
Okay.
When you talk about that, what sort of cost? You're talking about the impact it is for a small lot. I mean, what's the?
But I don't want to talk about the cost because I don't think the cost should enter into some of the equations of why you're looking at these regulations.
There's no bearings on regulations.
Right.
I'm just curious about rather than the cost, but the actual.
It's too hard to even quantify it right now because you're dealing with lots that are in way different configurations than the normal. And I think you got to agree with that.
I mean, we have a lot more people there. I think we could move this.
Here we go again. The chairman interrupts. He should be, the chairman that is, listening to Mike and encouraging him to speak up more. He's getting a very, very experienced person with a couple hundred people backing him. And a lot more that won't admit that they're backing him because they don't want to get in trouble with their business. Whether they will or not, it's another story. But they should be listening to Michael. It would cost them a fortune to get his input, and they never seem to come and ask unless you go to the public hearing. Isn't that a shame? Don't let them push you around, Mike.
Move this along
I'm
expeditiously.
going to try to do my best for you, Mr. Chairman. Back to the low impact development regulations, number 10, surety. You're asking for the construction activity to be a cash bond or letter of credit. What about a surety bond? And I know you're using surety bonds in other aspects of these regulations. I would ask you to add surety bond in there as well. Actually, in the inspections, number 11 and B, there's a mention of the use of the surety bond right there to complete the work. So I think you should enter in the surety bond up above. Again, now when you implement LID regulations, you're going in and you're going to have to maintain records for at least 5 years on the LID that you put into any building lot. Back to another reason why I think you got to be careful about how you're doing that, because you're becoming way too biased of what your requirements will be for the little guy versus a big project. Now we'll get to your favorite one. A lot of this stuff I'm answered already based on what I've seen. But we're going to move on to page 28, non-conforming uses, buildings, structures, and lots.
Page what?
28. This is the replacement, so to speak, for 10.6. And I saw the changes that you made, Steve, to it. And I think there's a couple things we got to finish here. And one is in the...
Slightly newer version, too.
This is the one I just got here tonight? Well, you correct me as we go along so we can save time then. How's that sound? Number 6, paragraph I, setbacks. A principal residential or commercial industrial structure abutting, which is actually now building, abutting or another non-residential zone property. I think you forgot to put residential or non-residential in there.
Now, it's a principal residential structure, so a house certainly qualifies for this.
Okay.
Or a commercial or industrial building that is next to another commercial industrial building. This is an easier way to say it. So if there's a commercial building next to a house, they can't use this provision.
Okay.
Because we don't want them to get that close to houses and...
Abutting another non-residential zone
Yes.
property. So I think perhaps we got to think of a way to straighten that language out so it doesn't seem like, to me when I first read it, and I still look at it this way, that it looks like a principal residential or commercial industrial building abutting another non-residentially zoned property.
Principal residential, and with doing those 2 commas, you can always take that out. Or a commercial industrial building abutting other non-residentially zoned property.
Okay.
So
one way or the other.
or both.
Well, one way or the other, we got to make sure that it affects residential property. It seems the way it's written.
Does. Yeah.
It seems the way it's written, it's just for non-residential.
No, you can take out what's between the 2 commas and it's what you want.
I'm not sure.
A principal.
Read that single sheet. I think the wording was changed.
Oh, it is. Well, I agree.
But that principal residential building, I probably should put in there.
Yeah, maybe that would help. Or commercial
Yeah,
industrial
you can add that,
building
that would make it clearer.
abutting another non-residential zone property.
That's only for a commercial building.
Yes. But the point we're trying to do is get this to apply to the residential side too as well.
It's absolutely.
I understand. So I think the little language change there, I think would be fine. The other thing was expanded to an additional 18 feet. And I got an issue with that because if somebody wanted to add a garage to their house, they're going to need closer to 24 or 25 feet. So I would make a recommendation you change that to 25 feet. And then that's an up to 25 feet. So
Right.
they can use 6 feet, 2 feet, 4 feet, but they have the ability to go up to 25 feet especially if they want to put in a garage.
But they could do that under D with a special permit as well.
I know, but
Yeah,
wouldn't you like to solve this 10.6 problem?
I'm trying. Keep tweaking.
I'm trying to do that with you, buddy. Okay, those are the only issues other than the those LID techniques utilized as allowed by the site to minimize the impact of the environment. So you're saying that here, but you're not saying that back in the other section. And that's in page 29A3.
Yeah, that's for rebuilding. Yeah, again, we'd like them to be used.
Well,
applicable. Again, they're
right.
small lots.
I'd like to see them used the same way back in that chapter where I was trying to show you the definitions of why I thought it was not appropriate. If you put something like that there, or something in the language that I gave you on it, I think you would eliminate that problem. The next few issues I have are, oh, no, that one we solved already. Next one I would have is in the earth excavation section, page 83, paragraph 9, where you speak of prima facie evidence of activity shall be the excavation of 3,000 cubic yards. It should be yards, not years.
Oh, yes, typo. Yeah, thanks.
And I'd also make a recommendation that you reduce the 3,000 cubic yards to 2,000 cubic yards. As in some of, especially in this economy, some of the smaller quarries that we have in this town aren't putting out as much product as they used to. So when they would come in for their renew of an existing permit, I think that 3,000 may give them some trouble. And I did confer with one of the fellows who has such a quarry, and he was upset by that. 3,000 cubic yards reduced to 2,000 cubic yards would be my recommendation.
Well, if they keep the permits up, I don't think it matters.
Well, it says that you could consider that as
After the granting or renewal of the permit.
yeah, as an abandonment. Okay, good. Next one is the same thing in earth excavation. Next page, 84, paragraph 11. If you go down to the fourth sentence, commission may approve a plan only when it is satisfied that he proposes. It's the satisfied that the
Typo, yeah.
purpose. Just a misspell. The next one, you've added the bulk storage into the corridor zone.
Yes.
Okay, and have you added, we spoke about that earlier, the outside storage, so that would be another recommendation I would have, but we kind of conferred on that where the,
Yeah, it's already there.
okay,
Yeah.
Michael,
we have to
you've
modify.
been on for almost 40 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I just beg your diligence in this. I think it's advantageous to us and the community to finish. I don't have much more to
I have
go.
many more people here who want to.
I understand you do. I
So
understand you do.
you're dominating, so let's.
I don't mean to be
5
dominating,
minutes.
sir. I think they're all logical things, and we're going to get to one more logical thing, which lies in the...
Yet another interruption by the chairman. That big bully. He's a tall guy, but he's not as tall as the Wilt Chamberlain I played scrimmage with when I was at Kansas University, and he was no bully. I like the way Mike stands up to these interferences. He's a real pro. He knows his stuff. He's got the information. He's studied it. He's talked to many people. And he has many people that signed a petition to defend him. I think he's doing a wonderful job. If, again, I keep saying the same thing, if I were the chairman of this commission, I'd ask him to speak longer. Maybe even extend the public hearing for a few months so other people would have a chance to get their input in.
zone for town center. And a parking requirement for off-street parking is not required. And Mr. Suter made comment at the last public hearing that that parking could be dispersed onto Main Street for parking. And I was a little bit dismayed about that, so I did some investigation. Main Street is a state highway, and I don't think you guys can defer your traffic to parking on a state highway. And furthermore, Main Street is always an issue to find a parking place on. And especially in the wintertime when snow removal is going to be necessary, that overflow of traffic or parking onto Main Street is not going to be a solution at all. It's going to become a problem. So I bring you this problem, but I also bring you a solution because I think that's the way you should do business. And state statute section 8(2)(c), you can make payment of a fee in lieu of parking requirements. Now, although you, in your regulations, you're allowing them to release it 50%, the section 8(2)(c) allows you to receive payment for every parking space. Are you familiar with it, Steve? That is taken over that you grant the applicant not to have, and they actually have to pay the commission, or actually pay the town. It has to end up in a sinking fund, which will be used, and I'm trying to do this expeditiously. The sinking fund has to be used only for parking or transient type stuff that the town could do as projects. So you have an opportunity, and I'll just give you some copies you can pass out to the members. I think it would be advantageous to you to add back in your parking requirements, and you can make agreements with your developers or your applicants that they can buy their parking spots at a set price, or they can construct a parking lot on their own. What it does, it gives us an ability to start a fund. As we all know, we've always needed parking in this community. We've always had trouble finding parking spots. People have trouble finding parking spots that come to a public hearing. So it would give us the ability to perhaps purchase some properties that are available with that sinking fund in the years to come, and be able to develop a municipal parking lot that would make sense for the redevelopment of Main Street. And that's another problem that if you're going to push that parking into Main Street, you're going to limit the new stores or the old stores that you're trying to rehabilitate. Where are those folks going to park to go into those new stores you're rehabilitating? So it doesn't make any sense to me. I think this is a great way for the town to create an economic threshold for parking. The statute allows you to do it. I'd highly make this recommendation that you consider this. And with that, Mr. Sandin, Mr. Chairman,
Thank you, Mr. Appreciate your time and consideration.
Let you get on to the next victim.
Does anyone else like to participate? Come forward and identify yourself.
My name is John Morisi, 24 Center Street. I'm a businessman and property owner in town. Just a couple of quick issues. This notebook is not filled with anything. First is the Union Pin property. We own that piece of property. And thank you for making the additions that you made to it as far as mixed use and multifamily dwellings. Both the adjacent property owner, Blaine Athorn, and I agree that that's a good use of the property. And the fact that it would be mixed use, we could put stores and housing there as well. So we really like that idea, and I think that's a really good idea. It's a much better use than is presently on the books for the property right now, which is industrial use. So we approve that, and I want to just tell you that both Blaine and myself endorsed it. The one thing I did notice here, though, which still have hotel on there, which is still a possibility for that property. We have several proposals on the books right now for that. But with the height limitation that's in here of 30 feet, it would be near impossible to do some of these uses.
Yeah, I brought that up earlier.
Okay, I got it later,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, because that's
50 to 75.
50 to 75 feet.
Yeah, I mean, that's more than adequate. I mean, else we'd wind up with really ugly looking buildings
Yeah,
there.
Blaine called me on that.
Okay. The other thing that I noticed is here in the town center, It already exists. We already have mixed use. We already have multifamily dwellings, and that should be in the permitted uses of those properties. Right now, you'd need a special permit. If, say, one of these buildings were to burn down, I would assume that you have to then get a permit to build again, and you wouldn't be able to build what you had there because it's not on the list. That would be on page 8, here. Section 3. Or you may not have printed right because that doesn't make any sense.
I've got different versions here, so it's...
Yeah, it's town center 3 something or other.
Yeah, they're special permits, so they are allowed. It just allows the commission to look a little bit more at, the way they're implemented. But they're allowed. You can certainly rebuild what was there anyway, if there's a fire or something like that.
All right, but that's our concern, is that we'd be able to rebuild what we have there right now, and also that that's the composition of a downtown, is mixed use, of these small downtowns in the Northeast. And not to list that initially is just putting one more stumbling block in the person's way of who wants to develop something. He then has to get a permit just to do that.
I believe you can rebuild what was there, just if you want to change it. You have to come in for a special permit, which, as long as you meet the requirements, it shouldn't be a problem.
I know, George, when we were going over some of this stuff years ago, one of the criteria was that if something were to happen to a building on Main Street, we couldn't possibly rebuild it because of the zoning regulations. It would have a setback, would have whatever, and we want to be able to have in the regulations rebuild exactly what we have. Because what we have is good. Some of it may be run down, but it is good, and it's a good philosophy. So I think that should be in there. And it's up to you guys. You're doing a marvelous job.
John, the town center, that's what we tried to do, is come up with something that reflects more of what we had, and it's a typical New England downtown Main Street.
Yeah.
And that the regulations we've had since '56, you're talking about having setbacks and so forth, which is impossible in most every situation on the Main Street. So we tried to make it such that, this is going to be a smoother opportunity to take some of the buildings that have got vacancies, and if they want to occupy them and so forth, it's not going to be the hardship of trying to come in with a site plan that has to be developed with a surveyor and so forth, which is a waste of time and money, because most of these properties don't have that. And if you look at Ledgebrook, with that development down there, the way our regulations read, if they've got a vacancy for over whatever the time period is, they're supposed to come back and show us the parking lot and all of that business. I think it's a total waste of energy and time, and the commission's time and the applicant's time. So that's getting squared away with this kind of thing.
Okay. If you look at the setbacks now in town center, there used to be minimum requirements. Now they're actually maximums. The maximum front yard setback is 5 feet.
Well, I wasn't contesting that. I was just basically saying it's an observation that I made, and not that I'd ever want to dispute anything Mickey said on a separate subject. We did a parking study years ago, and there was more than adequate parking in the town since people were taking their cars and moving from 2 blocks and then parking again. And there was a study done about that 10 years ago.
Well, Yale came up and helped us. They did the whole review. We had so much parking available. It's just getting the community to work with the property owners to utilize properties more effectively.
And there is plenty of parking in town. Like George says, if you can get somebody to get everybody to cooperate and allow people to use the parking, you'd have no problem at all. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for what you're doing.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, there are different views about the parking problem downtown in the center of Winsted, city of Winsted. There is a highway running right through it. Very difficult to do anything around that highway without the state's permission. Mickey Ham mentioned a way that we can improve our parking down in the center. And Mr. Marissi pointed, yet quite rightly, to the old studies and all the people who think there's plenty of parking downtown. Nobody's ever been able to resolve this problem. It looks to me like you should take Mickey's advice It won't hurt you any. It will add to the already no parking problem, if that truly exists. And then we can get on with business. It's an advantage. Well, I'll cut that meeting stuff off there. You can see the meeting on Charter TV, 191, 192, 3 or 4. I can't always remember where they show it. They bounce it around a little bit. You can see the whole meeting there. It lasts about an hour and 20 minutes. But what I wanted to point out on this program was that you had an excellent businessman, 2 or 3 on this program. I played 2 of them that have a lot of experience in town running boards and commissions and being on boards and commissions and doing work in the town and talking to engineers and really understanding the planning and zoning regulations. And they had the opportunity here, which they have it all. You're all very lucky to have people like this stand up for you, do a lot of work, spend a lot of money, take a lot of their personal and business time to get in there, read these regulations, listen to all kinds of people that bemoan the regulations, and some that like certain parts of the regulations. There's no doubt that the regulations have a lot of good points too, especially on the bookkeeping side. But when we had the first public hearing to eliminate Section 10.6 from the planning and zoning regulations, none of these people showed up except Mickey Ham. Mickey Ham was there. He led the effort, and that, of course, ballooned into everybody asking him to look into other issues in these new planning and zoning regulations as well. So he did that. He spent a lot of time. You're lucky to have him. I wish we had more people like that. Most people don't even want to show up for these meetings, especially people with experience over 20, 30 years dealing with the town. They're fed up with it. They know they're not going to get anywhere. It takes 15, 20 years to change anything in government. As I always tell you, Tony Michikowski told me when I worked for him. He was a representative for 20 years from Torrington. Had to be a Democrat because he ran a hot dog stand, but he was really a conservative Republican at heart. So I learned a lot from him. But anyway, I'm happy to be involved here. I'm not going to be involved much longer. When this is over, I'm going to be easing out to do my books and other things that I'm working on. I have some personal videos I want to do as well. So anyway, I've learned a lot here. The next meeting will be in 2 weeks, where they have to meditate and talk about these. The public hearing is over. It was ended on the night of the public hearing. And, of course, we have another public hearing on October 24th. I've changed the signs on the lake. And we'll get another chance to talk about Section 10.6 unless something happens before that. And there is some agreement reached on the side between Mickey and Steve and the Planning and Zoning Commissioners. It's not likely to happen, but if it does happen, then we probably won't need the next public hearing. But October 24th, probably be in the town hall again. Make sure you go around the side to get into the police station so you can get into this public hearing and you don't get blocked by the front doors that are there locked because they had some vandalism over the years at night inside the building and had to lock the doors. So anyway, attend the next public hearing, if it happens, on October 24th, probably in the town hall, same room, Hicks room, and speak up. Try to get other people to do it. I'll bet you Mickey and I have talked to 30 or 40 people about this. They can't make the meetings. They can't get there. They're out of town. They're on business trips. They're on pleasure trips. They've moved for the winter, etc., etc. So they ask us to do that. So when the chairman, the big bully, pushes Mickey Ham and tries to get him to stop speaking in a public hearing, anybody can speak as long as they want in a public hearing unless there's a time limit set on people. And if they have to take longer for the public hearing, like say 3 or 4 hours, well, that's the way it goes. Or they could always continue the public hearing if they think more people want to speak and they're just too tired to finish that evening. So it's not very good. If I were running that commission, I would say, Mickey, give us the advantage of all your experience as a selectman, as a vice chairman of P&Z for 6 years, and as a member of Planning and Zoning in the good old days when we were trying to grow the grand list for 14 years. I wouldn't try to get him to shut up, and I wouldn't rant about things like that. There is whether they like it or not, there is some politics involved, and there shouldn't be. I'd like to say a little more now, before I end this program, to see if I can encourage more and more people to sign the petition. There are already a couple hundred signatures, 220 or so. Come to the next public hearing on October 24th. There'll be the public hearing for the application we put in for Section 10.6. That'll be the first thing on the agenda. And then there'll be a regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting following that, where they will most likely discuss all the information they got from people at the Planning and Zoning total rewrite of the P&Z regs public hearings. There were 2. Well, the first one was extended, but they have now closed the public hearing. So anyway, come, get as many people as you can to come, help support these people. Go down and see Steve Salowski in the meantime. Go see anybody you can in the town hall that might help you. Call Mickey Ham if you can. Call anybody else who might know something. I know a lot of people are doing that. But get to the meeting, sign the petition, read it first, sign the petition, get to town hall on October 24th. Don't go in the front door. Got to go around the side to the police door and take the elevator up to the next floor to get in to the meeting. Thank you very much. Brian O'Haron, Spreading the Word, number 14. They can't always get what they want. They can't always get what they want. They can't always get what they want. But if we try real hard, we just might get some of what we want. When I scrimmaged in college against Wilt Chamberlain in basketball, he was 7'2" or so, but he was no bully.